Hey guys, Guy here. Welcome, Guy Haberman. It is YouTube. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to the podcast, it's great to have you on the pod. 5 stars in a review on Apple Podcast helps out, and you can leave a question there if you want. You can also go to heyguy.co and send me a message and sign up for hat updates. They should be coming soon, and may even be working on another hat. Anyway, I got a lot. It is Monday, late morning, mid-morning here in the Pacific time zone. And I got a lot of messages this weekend that I was wrong about 49ers rookie right guard Dominic Puni. And you know what that means. It can only mean one thing. It's time for the 2024 return of Guy Football Focus, GFF. Now, last year, GFF debuted during the camp battle for the 49ers number 2 quarterback position between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. And the reason I graded every throw of training camp was because I wanted to make sure there was no emotion in the way. And so I thought, you know what? I said after the game on Saturday night that I thought Dominic Puni was not breaking through the open doorway left by Feliciano and Burford. And many of you said, yes, he is. He's on track. He is going to be the 49ers opening day right guard, which may very well be the case, was part of my thought process Saturday, but that he hadn't done it yet. But a lot of you disagreed. I mean, like all of you disagreed. Here's some of the disagreements. Seth, Puni looked good in pass pro. Paul, you're way off on Puni. He looked impactful. Eric, what exactly didn't you like about Puni's performance? And 1901 WM said, seems like Brandon Thorne, who's a big part of the offensive line film community, and Brad Graham from the SF Niners. He says, seems like Brandon Thorne and Brad Graham had an opposite view of Puni than you. Both think there is no reason why he shouldn't start and that he did really well. By the way, 4 comments, which anytime somebody says that people don't know how to communicate on the internet, show them those 4 comments. Look at these. Look at these 4 upstanding citizens just saying I disagree like a normal human would. See, don't let people tell you there are not regular human beings acting like normal human beings on the internet. So shout out to those 4 people. So I said, perfect. I'm going to rewatch the tape anyway. Let's rewatch all of Dominic Puni's snaps and see what we found. And I found a couple different things. One thing I found was that he was better than I thought. He was better than I thought. So let's just start with that. Baseline, he was better than I thought. Thing number 2 that I found was that the GFF scale, grading scale, is not great for offensive line play. And I'll tell you why. Because for an offensive lineman, 1 or 2 negative plays can really overshadow the grade. On the PFF scale, which is also the GFF scale, and I know for the podcast audience, these numbers, I'm not going to go too deep here, but a 0 is good. A 0 is doing your job. And then there's a plus 0.5 and a plus 1 and a plus 1.5 and a plus 2. And this is how the PFF scale actually works. Or maybe it goes up to plus 1.5. And it goes negative the other way, right? So negative 0.5, a negative 1, and a negative 1.5, et cetera. Like a negative 1 or a positive 1, these are extraordinary plays. When you look at it on a quarterback scale, I didn't look at it today, but I know from like 2023 or 2022, whichever it was, Matthew Stafford led the NFL in plus 1 throws, exceptional throws, at like 52 or something like that, 50, somewhere in that range, right? So it's like there's like 3 throws a game that are exceptional, basically. That's not a lot, right? It's not a big separator. And I think what I found when I went through the 27 or so plays with Puni is, and I'll be transparent about the grading, I had him at 2 plus 0.5s, a minus 0.5, a minus 1, and then everything else was a 0. So like 25, what would have that been? 23 0 plays. Well, 0 plays are good. 0 plays means you are doing your job. Talanoa Hufanga basically became a Pro Bowler and then an All-Pro by always doing the right thing and then doing a little bit more on top of that. And maybe that's a Maybe now I'm stepping in a Hufanga debate that I don't want to get into, but he was really good. But his baseline was, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not going to make a bunch of mistakes. I may be a half step late, but I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. So I called up my buddy Jeff Schwartz, who was also a huge part of like the internet offensive line community, but also the real life offensive line community. He is a voter for the Joe Moore Award, which goes out to the best offensive line in football every year. And he really knows offensive line play. So I called Jeff and I'm like, Jeff, here's the problem. I just did this Puni grading and I've got him at a negative 0.5. And I'm looking at my full grades. I think it's misleading because I've got him doing his job basically 25 out of 27 plays. And 2 of those 25, I've got him doing a plus job. But on, I think it was offensive play 19 for the Niners, he doesn't get to the linebacker. And that linebacker makes a tackle on Cody Schrader. And then on play 21, he gets blasted back into the end zone. And I give him a -1 on that play. What do you think of these, Jeff? And Jeff looked at both plays and he said, I think you've graded it correctly, but this is the problem with using that scale for offensive line play. He said, the way I grade it, the way that if you're in an offensive line room, you grade it, is you get a plus for doing what you're supposed to do. You get a plus for doing something extraordinary. You get a minus for a minus play, and you get like a minus maybe for a really bad rep or let's say a sack or something like that. So at the end of a game, an offensive lineman had a good game if 90% or more of his snaps were plus graded. So when I changed my grading from the PFF GFF scale, which gave on my grade a -0.5 to Puni, which sounds bad, but there's a bunch of zeros on there that are good. That's a good play. To the way Jeff said, this is how O-lineman grade it, just plus and minus. It changes. All of a sudden, Puni goes to positives on 93% of his plays. That's a good game. -2 plays, that just happens. Neither, the play in the end zone wasn't a sack or whatever. So here's a young player figuring out his position in his first preseason game. The grade was 93% positive, 2 negative plays. That's pretty good. So he was better than I thought. And a lot of people said that to me, as I just showed you. Also on the rewatch, I just said, I'm just going to watch him on every play and I'm just going to write it down. It's not going to be what do I think, right? Which is where grading can help. Even though different people, I'm sure, use different grades. And if we got Jeff in here or Brandon Thorne or one of those guys in here and say, well, how should I have given him more positives, plus 0.5s on the PFF scale? I don't have to worry about that when I use the other scale because it's just, did you do your job or not? That's a plus. So that's really good. That's good. That's good. And then I'll add to this something that Matt Barrows said. I'm going to share this quote with you. This is what Matt Barrows said on his 49ers Plus Minus podcast. Him and Tim Kawakami have the podcast. The text actually has the word first year here, what it's supposed to say, Chris Forrester. Matt Barrows says this. I think Chris Forrester is he's still kind of cautiously optimistic, but I think with every outing, they are moving toward Dominic Puni being the week 1 starter, which at this point means Puni is saving their draft class too, which is a separate issue. That's less important, but he's saving their draft class. I mean, he is. I mean, Pearsall's cowing, what maybe Malik Mustafa will be safety 3 here. But that was Matt Barrows' review. So, and you know what? After I forget about watching it and just telling you what I think, which is what I did Saturday. I just watched it and immediately game reaction, go back to the tape, especially on the offensive line play. And that's where I graded it on the regrade. So GFF needed to make a reappearance. I'm glad. I like GFF. And the emotionless evaluation of the numbers says pretty good. By the way, to go a little further on what Jeff told me, he said, the other thing with the 2 plays that you graded him negative, he said you graded it correctly in terms of what you gave the PFF, the GFF number, but here's what you don't know. You don't know, was the center supposed to help him on that run play on the goal line? Did the center get in his way on that play when he doesn't get to the linebacker? In fact, maybe the first mistake created the second mistake. So you got a young player because he was trying to do something in that second mistake that he didn't do on the first mistake, which was get to the second level. But all in all, even if we just say it was his mistake on those plays, he still grades out pretty well. So there you go. You guys who said he was better than I said he was, you were right, and I was wrong. And upon doing my own grading, I became right. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy we get that settled. Now here's the other thing. On the film rewatch, D. Winters probably was not as good as I thought. I think what happened with Puni is the two negative plays really stood out in my mind on the post game. And on the post game, the positive plays for D. Winters probably overweighted. When you watch again, you go, he's actually kind of in the wrong spot a couple of times. And I think what I said about Hufanga can also be applied to D. Winters here, which is for his job this year, it's not about making splash plays. It's about the fundamental plays, right? That's who Hufanga earned himself a spot. I'm going to be in the right place at the right time. I'm not going to get tricked. And they just can't afford to have big mistakes. And we'll see. It may be that big mistakes actually are what prevent Winters, at least at this moment in time, from replacing Campbell early on. So there's the rewatch. Many of you know by now the Niners aren't going to joint practice with the Saints this week. And, the reason is Kyle Shanahan, even though he hasn't directly addressed it yet, has basically said it a couple of times. We don't have enough healthy guys. They didn't last week. Watching 49ers practice last week, a few people commented like, God, how are they going to – this is not going to be good with the Saints. They don't have enough guys, enough starters healthy. And they determined the same thing. Now, the one thing you think is they do play the Raiders for the last preseason game. That game is in Vegas on a Friday night. Could they practice? They've already done it where they go to Vegas and practice with the Raiders. Could they do that again ahead of that game on a shorter week? I don't know, but just something to keep in the back of your head. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan will get asked about it today or later in the week. But a little missed opportunity there, but I don't know how much they're really missing if their guys aren't going to be healthy. But for a guy like Mustafa, a guy like D. Winters, a guy like Puni, I do think the joint practices are going to be pretty valuable, especially for Mustafa and Puni, right? Two young guys who need a lot of real reps because they might be playing a lot of snaps. If you said right now which rookie is going to play the most snaps this year, you'd pick Puni at this point over Pearsall, over Cowing, over Schrader, who I thought looked good, looked like he looked in camp in the game. Over Mustafa, you'd pick Puni, but Mustafa may play a lot, so I'd like to see Cowing get some of those reps. So I wonder, we'll find out this week if it is possible for the Niners to reschedule a live practice, a couple of them with the Raiders and give those guys some reps. The other guy would be good for, who knows if he'll be back by then, but if Trent Williams is back by week 3, you don't want him to play in the preseason game, but you wouldn't mind him getting some reps against Max Crosby. I don't know if he's at this point, let's just say he signed even today. Would he be back for a live practice? But get some Bosa reps, get some Crosby reps, and just get him back up to speed once you pay him. I mean, maybe that's part of the benefit of those live practices, and they're not going to have it. So anyway, that's where that's at. The other thing I wanted to share was something I heard again listening to Barrows and Kawakami. It's their must listen. And Tim was talking about the Brandon Aiyuk situation. And, I did a video on Friday and a podcast on Friday talking about leverage, which holds up. You should listen to it or watch it if you missed it. And a lot of my opinions from Friday, they hold up till Monday, at least, on Aiyuk and where the leverage is. But one thing I've said a few times last week was any deal with Aiyuk can get done, but there will still be a conversation internally with the Niners, him and them, about like, hey, we got to do a little fence mending here. Well, this is what Tim said on Sunday.
I just have heard that there's just been some like uncertainty both sides. He doesn't like the way the 49ers have played this. The 49ers do not like the way he's played this. maybe it's a short-term relationship. You talked about that. I know you're joking a little bit about that. Sunny, press conference, everybody's hugging each other. I don't think that's how this ends. I do not. I think there might be a deal. It might even be a long-term, but it ain't going to be with everybody hugging each other. I just don't think that the mood is there. There's been some, I'm not saying bridges have been blown up, but there's been some chopping away at these bridges. And that's why it's taken so long. That's why all this brinksmanship's been going on. And that's why it's not done yet. Even like it does look like the options are
narrowing is what he was saying. What he was saying there is like, he goes into a whole thing about the Steelers and, how the Niners aren't going to go from losing they're not going to hard line. We're not going to lose a contract to Aiyuk to turn around and lose a trade to the Steelers. They're just not going to do that. So just more insight, that's real insight there on the situation. Take it or leave it. He's insightful. He knows, he's talking to people, and I've talked to people, and I said it last week. This is part of what's going on here. It doesn't mean they can't get a deal done with him, but I thought it was interesting. Tim says they could get a deal done and still it will feel different potentially. Now, maybe it takes another week and they clear, everything's cool, and maybe they have a huggy press conference. It's a little odd right now. It's just the reality of it. Beyond just what's obvious is the point. Of course, it's a little odd, but there's just some stuff going on that even if they were to re-sign him, it's not all immediate harmony. Now, but do you need some would argue you don't need immediate. You don't need total harmony. Like, I call the plays, you run out there, run the routes, catch the ball when it's in your hands, and that's fine. The idea that a locker room, even when things are going well, is in total, everyone loves everybody, everyone's talking all the time. It's just not the way it is. So maybe we're overrating harmony a little bit. Wally Lama on the chat says, I liked him, but he's wrong a lot. I think what tends to happen is he's insightful, and sometimes the thing he's telling you could happen doesn't happen, and that gets interpreted as, oh, well, he was wrong. He said they could get Laurie Market. They didn't get him. He was wrong. I said this before. I'll say it again. I say it a lot. It's like when you hear reports from people that know a lot of stuff, your default should not be, that guy's wrong. I mean, it didn't happen. Or I think your default should be, oh, that was insightful information. It didn't totally transpire that way, but it doesn't mean that's not what was happening behind the scenes. Colton comment. Wasn't there chatter like this with Debo? There was strain, and now it seems solid between parties. Yeah, I think I don't think it was quite the same, but yes, there was chatter like this. I don't think the reality of the situation was exactly the same. I'll tell you that. But yes, and now Debo's in a situation where Debo is, kind of back to being the golden child. Like McCaffrey and Purdy and, Trent is always kind of that, and Bosa and Fred Warner. They got a lot of those guys. But yeah, it was there. Yes, Colton, there was chatter like this, and there was strain, and it was real. And it was also a little different. I'll just leave it at that. But they did have to come back from it, and it's great. Yeah, I think it's a little different. That's not me. How do I put this? I'm just telling you, I think it's a little different. But you're also correct. It was also not great, and they fixed it. So that can definitely happen. And Debo is now, if he wasn't then, he is now a model citizen for them. He really is. It's why I've been saying for a while, even through the comments about, even through the draft process where they considered trading Debo and they, investigated trading Debo and Aiyuk, or one of the two, right? It's why I've said it's no lock that Debo is gone next year. A lot of people I think have viewed it that way. Like, well, Aiyuk will extend and Debo will be gone. And it could happen for sure. Like, there's a lot of logical reasons why it happens that way, but it's not a lock. You might look up and Pearsall can't be healthy and Aiyuk is on a 1-year deal, and the calf is bugging McCaffrey, and Debo's a superstar again. Like it's not that far off from a reality that he gets the most touches on the team and is the most productive player. That could certainly happen. So I know it's not exactly your comment, but it led to it led to that. James with a $4.99 super chat. Thanks, James. 49ers doing right with Greenlaw, which makes Trent and Aiyuk demanding money frustrating. Dre cap hit is $8 million. I'm not sure what you mean, James. I'm not sure what you mean, but I will say this: like Aiyuk asking for more money. This is a normal time when people get a contract extension. So, he's not trying to get a deal done at a weird time. This is exactly when Brandon Aiyuk should be trying to get a contract. Maybe they could have done a contract with him last year. They wouldn't be in this position. Or they could have got it done earlier and they wouldn't be in this position. I think they feel like they should have got it done earlier and it didn't happen. But they didn't get it done. Like whether you feel like it should or shouldn't have, you got to get it done. They didn't. So, are you saying they did the right thing with Greenlaw and then he got hurt and now his cap hit is getting in the way? I don't think his cap hit is getting in the way here. I mean, you've got to know if Trent Williams is your left tackle and you say he's the best left tackle in the game and one of the best players in the game, you constantly say that, and then he's not paid like the best left tackle in the game, that you're going to have to pay him like the best left tackle in the game. So they're going to have to pay him like the best left tackle in the game, and they're going to do it. I mean, they don't really have a choice here. And I don't think Dre Greenlaw's money is getting in the way there. I mean, to me, the bigger issue with Greenlaw is not his money. It's just that he's hurt. Like that, that's a problem for them because they just don't have anybody near his level right now. And they have a few holes on that defense, but they also do some things really well in that defense. Their secondary, their corners are really, really good. Really good. And that's why, coming out of the preseason game and last week, it was frustrating because these are not the 49ers that we're evaluating and watching here. The 49ers that really we're evaluating and watching have Brock Purdy at quarterback. Maybe that guy's a little bit better. Maybe he got better. They got George Kittle. They got Christian McCaffrey, who needs to get healthy, but they got Debo, and when in doubt, you just give them the ball. They don't have Bosa. They don't have, we're not watching these guys a lot in practice and in the preseason. So, I mean, that's what makes it a little frustrating to watch because that's not the team. Astro asks, do you think the Niners can reach the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl without Aiyuk this year? Yeah, I mean, part of it would depend, did they get something back for him, right? If now this Browns trade isn't happening, but had they traded him to the Browns and got Amari back, I go, yeah, they could do that. So the short answer is yes, but I don't feel nearly as good about it as if he's the guy on their team. But yeah, I don't think losing Aiyuk torpedoes their entire season. They still will have, even if you take him away, you look up and you go, still one of the most talented rosters in the league with a really good coach. And maybe the quarterback is a little better and that makes up for it. But, this is why they don't want to do the deal without, or we're not willing to do the deal without getting a receiver in return, unless they get a total overpay on picks. Like, okay, you're going to give us 2 1s for Aiyuk. That doesn't help this year, but it's such an overpay that we got to take it. And then, I do think there's more targets out there for Juwan Jennings that he doesn't get. So he'd get a few of them. Maybe part of that would be getting Pearsall healthy. Comment, they made a Super Bowl with their best receiver being Emmanuel Sanders as a midseason trade. That's true. That you could throw the ball to Kittle more. So the answer to that question is yes. Like you could. I prefer we don't try to find out, but you could. Comment, thoughts on if Brock had any say in the Aiyuk matters. He's Brock's favorite target by far, and after the recent struggles of Brock in training camp, curious if this forced the Niners back to the table. So no, I don't think he has any say. I don't think he's had recent struggles either. That's a false premise there. Recent struggles of Brock in training camp. He is not. I don't think he's had recent struggles. I've watched almost all their training camp practices. He's been fine. The biggest question with Brock is he even better this year? Does he get better this year? And he should. He should get better this year. Regular offseason, not rehabbing, spending more time with Kyle, all that stuff. So he should get better this year. I think he needs to be, a little better. You just need a guy to continue to develop. And it's the thing once the season starts, we talk about Brock all day long. It's fantastic. I mean, a young quarterback developing, it's like one of the best things you can have in the NFL to talk about. But this time of year, we don't really get to talk about it much. There's no competition. He's not throwing to his guys all the time. He's not playing in the preseason much, if at all. So we don't really get to see him. But that'll be a fun part of the actual season. And hopefully they get him protected. Comment from JD, is Pearsall going to start the year on IR? Is he cooked for the season? You have to think it's a real possibility that he starts the year on IR. We'll see if he comes back this week. The Niners have a problem at receiver because their depth is not good. Their young guys have not stepped up. Ronnie Bell has not developed into a guy that is going to be on the 46-man roster, or at least if he is, that you feel good about really being able to contribute. The same on Danny Gray. So you really need Pearsall and Cowing, one of those two guys, to be ready to contribute, because you're not going to put Ricky Pearsall through waivers to try and get him on the practice squad. You don't want to put a 4th-round pick in Jacob Cowing through waivers to try and get him to the practice squad. So, and you don't want both of those guys to be among your 5 active receivers on game day, or 6 maybe. So one of them probably will have to start the year on IR. It looked like maybe it was going to be Cowing. We still got you got 3 weeks a month. So Pearsall's got time to come back here, but we're just thinking about how are they putting this roster together. The thing that concerns you with Pearsall, or concerns me with Pearsall, is that the injury that he's dealing with now is a re-aggravation of a shoulder injury that he had previously. He came in with the hamstring. That got better. That got healed. He was about to practice full, and then he has the shoulder. So when you have a re-aggravation, it means that, potentially you came back maybe before that thing was 100%. And now do you wait a little longer on it to make sure you don't re-aggravate it again? It's particularly tough, I think, for a rookie player who is still, he has not gotten used to, has not really experienced the physicality of the NFL. I think that was clear early. One of the big tests for him would be getting stronger through this year and into year 2. I think we've kind of already identified. I was pretty positive on Pearsall. I'm hopeful for him, but it was clear, being on the field with Aiyuk and Debo and Jennings and Kittle and McCaffrey, and that's the best thing he'd have going for him this year. He's not going to be one-on-one with the number 1 corner necessarily, which is good because he's going to need to get stronger. But now, you don't know. How long is this injury going to be? Is this going to be a short-term thing? If so, okay. If not, is he going to lose strength? Is he going to not be ready to play in the next preseason game or the game after that? Is he not going to be ready week 1? So these are all things when people say to me, like, oh gosh, you're so I get a couple of these. It always happens this time of year too. I got this comment the other day on YouTube. Damn, this whole site is glass half empty. I know to come here when I'm depressed now. It happens every August. I get those comments because the reality is you're trying to win a championship. That's what everything we talk about is about, them trying to get that 0.5% better that beats the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And you look back and you go, the margins are this thin to losing to the Packers and this thin to losing to the Lions. So that is the lens that I look at all this stuff through. So some people don't like that. They prefer a different lens. That's fine. I don't know what to tell you. That's the lens I look through with this group. The standard is they got to win a Super Bowl. How do they win? So everything is about that. So all these little things matter. They matter to the coaches. They matter to the players. And because they matter to Kyle Shanahan and they matter to John Lynch and they matter to the margin of, are you going to be the 1 seed or the 2 seed? If you're the 1 seed, you get a bye. If you're the 2 seed, you're not. All these little things add up. And so I treat them like they all matter too. And if some people interpret that as glass half empty, I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, but not sorry. And it happens every August. I'm used to it now. At first, I'm like, what is the deal here? That's what happens every August. Oh, you're nitpicking every practice. Well, so are they. They grade the practices. They're nitpicking it, so I'm nitpicking it. If Kyle Shanahan says, I don't care about this, it doesn't matter, then I'll say I don't care about it. It doesn't matter. But last I checked, Chris Forrester doesn't look at it that way. So I'm not going to look at it that way. And I'm no Chris Forrester, but come on. We just got to treat it. If somebody tells us this is important, then it's important. And let's treat it as such. So anyway, on Pearsall, yeah, he could start the year on IR. And on one hand, they weren't counting on him for 40 catches this year. But on the other hand, I do think they're going to need him a little bit. A little bit this year. I thought they would. They could certainly use him. Put it that way. Question: how many games is Trent going to miss? I think none. Well, with a contract situation, I think they'll get it. They got to get this done by week 1. But with a contract situation, I will say none. Look at that. Glass half full. Look at that. Look at the positive guy. Look how positive he is. He's so positive. Question from Depeche. Your thoughts. Pearsall will not be what we think he can be. Availability is the biggest ability. By the way, Lombardi and you are my go-to for football. Thanks, Depeche. So you're asking, what are my thoughts on your take that he will not be what we think he can be? Availability is the biggest ability. I remain open-minded, but the arrows, the early trend has been negative. I think the early trend on the player, this is where I differ with a lot of people. I thought he practiced fine. I thought he's getting open. His hands were reliable. The question of whether he can consistently get open about press coverage in the NFL is a fair question. Like, we don't know the answer to that. But as I watched him in practice, I had a pretty positive review of Ricky Pearsall. I did. I had a very positive review of Ricky Pearsall because I thought he would fit in really well on this offense with the other guys they have. That the key for him was you're going to get whatever the number is, 30 targets, 40 targets over the course of the year. You're going to get, that means, what is that? That's 2 to 3 a game, maybe, which when you say it that way is actually high. He's not getting 3 targets a game, but let's just say 2 to 3 targets a game. So you just got to be in the right place at the right time in that moment. There've probably been 5 plays that are called leading us to that moment, right? Because that's the way Shanahan, it all builds to something. Everything's a play off of something else. So when you get wide open, or when this is your moment to beat one-on-one coverage and get open deep, or be open on the sideline, or you're crossing shallow and nobody's following you, you better be in the right place at the right time, and you better catch that ball. And to me, when Ricky Pearsall's been on the field, he has looked to me like the guy who can do that, who can really fill that spot in the way that Ray McLeod wasn't always in the right spot at the right time, in the way that Danny Gray, when he gets his 2 snaps in a game, has not caught the ball when it's been on his hands. I think Ricky Pearsall is going to do that. Now, is that what you want when you say, I'm drafting a guy in the first round? No, you want a higher ceiling than that. There's no question. But they tried to trade out of the first round. They knew that. They were eyes wide open when they drafted him, and I thought he looked to me like the guy I hoped he would look like in camp. Others have disagreed with that, but I thought it looked good. So my issue on Pearsall is not any of that stuff. It's the availability. Jacob Cowing, Stephen. We'll see. I don't know. Hasn't played enough yet. Leon says, in my opinion, I only give the injury prone tag to a player once they've gotten injured in consecutive years. Yes, I think it's too early for that. So I do agree with that. I'm not doing the injury prone thing on Ricky Pearsall yet, but you also can't ignore it. Comment, Cowing's skill set seems, from Steven, Cowing's skill set seems more exciting than Pearsall in this offense. It's just something they haven't had. In theory, just like Danny Gray in theory was something they haven't had. Cowing, if he can get himself up to speed, could be pretty valuable in the return game. In theory. I hate talking theory so much, but it's August 12th, so some of this is theory. Because they could use a little dynamic. The one thing you see with Trent Taylor in the return game, the opportunity for explosion doesn't appear to be there, but they trust him, yeah, I mean, it's like they can't afford for Cowing and Pearsall. I shouldn't say they can't afford. It's just really hard. If Cowing and Pearsall, if one of them is not really actually ready to contribute on the 46-man roster, you're in a tough spot because you can't waive them and get them to the practice squad. So like you're carrying one of them and they're not really ready to contribute, or you're IRing the other one. It's just not ideal. Especially when your other receivers have not really stepped up. You just haven't developed at that spot the way you would want to. Dirty Purdy, here's a comment. I agree with your perspective, but you were unusually depressing and irritated during your last live on Saturday night, LOL. I'm a fan of your show, though, not trying to knock you. I do not deny. I think I said it in the show that I was irritated. I was irritated. I was irritated with watching. I said it. Actually, if you go back and watch the front of that, I'm not saying I'm never irritated. I'm irritated. But that's not like, that wasn't some secret on Saturday night. Go watch the beginning of that show. And so this is fair. This is a fair observation. But I said it at the beginning of the show on Saturday. Essentially, I'm irritated. Why was I irritated? Because I was so tired of watching B and C team football. Because that's where they practiced. All those guys hurt. Nobody's practicing. None of it matters. I'm watching a preseason game with like 2 or 3 starters in it total. It's like, no, I'm not going to be happy about that. That's not fun. I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek now, but I'm not denying that I was irritated and somewhat depressing. I don't know. I call it real. But yeah, no, that's true. That was the case Saturday night. Folks, and I'm not yelling at this commenter now, Dirty Purdy, just the general, like, I'll just go back to what I said before. If you like, Guy, how do you think about the Niners, right? What is the overarching, the umbrella over which you talk about them? Is this the team that wins a Super Bowl? That's it. That's it. That's the overarching. That's the overarching umbrella. So you're like, I don't know. He's nitpicking. Yes, correct. Definitely nitpicking. I do not deny the nitpicking. Pat says, I 100% love that you were fired up, Guy. Jay says, how happy are we that football's on again? Very. You know what was really good if you're looking for some football content like today or tomorrow? The Rams broadcast had Sean McVay on during the broadcast. Some of you probably saw it on Sunday, Rams Cowboys. It was good. McVay on the show was very good. Love your high pitch tone. All right. I think that's that for this. Well, actually, I should tell you a few other things. So the Niners practice this week. I'll be out at Niners practice Thursday and Friday. I will not be out there today. They practice in the afternoon. I am going to, for my college football schedule, I'm going to USC practice today. And I'm going, tomorrow, going to do a USC practice on Tuesday. And then I'm going to Eugene and I'm going to an Oregon Ducks football practice on Wednesday. I can't wait about that. But as stuff happens, I'll be able to do shows from the road as always. And I'll catch up with everybody soon. Appreciate you very much. Hit the like, subscribe, all that. Go to heyguy.co. Check out Circus Sports, by the way, and the Circus Sports contest. Right now, go to circusports.com, click on contest for information about Circa Survivor and Circa Million. Just go to Vegas. The Niners are playing in Vegas. So if you're going to be in Vegas for the Niners games, $6 million in guaranteed prizes in Circa Million. That's $1,000 per entry. Circa Survivor, that's where you pick 5 games a week against the spread. Circa Survivor is $10 million guaranteed to the winner or winners. That's $1,000 per entry. You pick 1 game per week, straight up, not against the spread. And whoever goes undefeated the longest wins or shares the winnings. But you do have to enter in Nevada. Okay, you get signed up with a proxy in Nevada. So if you're going to be in Vegas or in Reno at Circus Sports, you can play from anywhere once you get signed up there. Visit circusports.com and click on contest, circusports.com and click on contest. Also should have the hats this week. I don't think I'm going to get them to the house today, but when I return from this LA Eugene trip, I should have them. I'll photograph them, get them up on the site at heyguy.co. And if you sign up there and click the box that says, yes, send me alerts. You got to click a box when you sign up. It's annoying, but you got to do it. Then you'll be on the mailing list and you'll know when the 262 hats and the Hey Guy hats are up for sale there. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging. Have a great week. And Zachariah Branch for Heisman, says somebody on the chat. All right.